Thursday, March 31st, 2022, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Today, we're gonna revisit the dollar and how after almost 50 years, the IOU Nothing system that John Exter coined is coming to an end. You might want to call it the Petrodollar. And we're going to look at the Smithsonian Agreement, which is something not many people talk about, and I haven't really talked too much about. We always focus on August 15th, 1971, but I would say 2023 is really an important year in terms of those who maybe look at things like a jubilee or a 50-year period, so to speak. And we're also going to look at a couple of articles in the FT that have come out in the last 24 hours that prove or that show that it's going to be very tough to reverse what's happening. And it's to do with Russia and China, how much closer they're getting. It's also to do with a desperate attempt by the US to provide natural gas to Europe. There's a lot of desperate acts right now, I think, by the Anglo-American Empire. They are on their last legs. And of course, we're going to look at the markets afterwards. It's the last day of the quarter. We're going to go back then to 1971, actually, because that's actually when the Smithsonian Agreement was signed. So let's go through it. Smithsonian Agreement, announced in December 1971, created a new dollar standard. I mean, we don't talk too much about that, do we? I guess it's because it failed, but let's continue anyway. Whereby the currencies of a number of industrialized states were pegged to the US dollar. So Nixon closed the gold window back in August 15th, 1971. So a few months before. And now they wanted to peg all other currencies to the dollar, but there's a problem. So let's continue. These currencies were allowed to fluctuate by 2.25% against the dollar. The Smithsonian Agreement was created when the Group of 10, or G10 states, Belgium, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the Netherlands, Sweden, the United Kingdom, and the United States. So the same old suspects that are fighting really hard against Russia, punishing Russia, raised the price of gold, well, today that is, of course, raised the price of gold to $38, an 8.5% increase over the previous price at which the US government had promised to redeem dollars for gold. The problem now, though, is that gold was not part of the system. The US had, how can I say, they had frozen the convertibility, or they temporarily, as Richard Nixon said, you know, they stopped convertibility. And I think these people thought gold might come back still, but it never did. The changing gold price devalued the dollar by 7.9%. The Bretton Woods Conference of 1944 established an international fixed exchange rate system based on the gold standard, in which currencies were pegged to the United States dollar, itself convertible into gold at $35 an ounce. So we hear a lot of economists, even the free market economists like Milton Friedman, when the system went completely crazy and we started seeing floating exchange rates. They said it was the free market, but gold is money, and it's a measure of value. So if you change the measure of value, of your currency vis-a-vis money, it's a crazy system. It doesn't really apply as a free market, but that was the excuse given. And even though I admire Milton Friedman for a lot of his ideas, he was never a sound money individual, and he was never anti-central bank, which I think is something crazy. I'm going to skip here to the development, what happened to this Smithsonian Agreement. It says, although the Smithsonian Agreement was hailed by President Nixon as a fundamental reorganization of international monetary affairs, it failed to encourage discipline by the Federal Reserve or the United States government. The dollar price in the gold free market continued to cause pressure on its official rate. So gold was still banned in the US at that time, and before 1975, but gold was trading in the international markets. Yes, it's not just traded on COMEX in New York. And the dollar was dropping versus money. And it was disrupting this fixed rate system that they try to keep. And soon after, a 10% devaluation was announced on 14th of February, 1973. Japan and the OEEC countries decided to let their currencies float. So there you go. That was the end of the Smithsonian Agreement. And that was really the true beginning of this IOU Nothing system, even though you could argue it started with Nixon on August 15th, 1971. A decade later, all industrialized states had done the same. Yes, later, Nixon, his Secretary of the Treasury, and also Kissinger negotiated the Petrodollar agreement with the Saudis. Petrodollar agreement basically said to the Saudis, who ran OPEC and were the biggest oil producer, you buy or you sell your oil in dollars, and you take those dollars and you buy treasuries, and we'll defend your kingdom. And that put the whole world on a petrodollar standard. But it didn't stop the United States Treasury, the Federal Reserve, and all other central banks now from cheating, from creating currency out of thin air with no backing of money, of gold. After all, JP Morgan once said, when asked in Congress, I think back in 1913, under oath, they asked him what gold was. He said it was money, simply money, and that everything else was credit. So, yes, we've had this system. And for those people who think that the new or a potential new multipolar monetary system will be backed by a basket of commodities, I think that's a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake because you cannot discipline the issuing central banks and governments with a basket of commodities. You can't go to the Russian central bank or the Fed or any other central bank and take $100 note and say, I want a barrel of oil. You can't do that, but you can with gold, with money. You can ask for convertibility, and that's the key. And the other key as well, and the reason why gold, even though it is a commodity, but it's the most marketable commodity, but it's not consumed. You can't have the base of the monetary system be consumed. It has to be always there and growing a little bit. Of course, I admit it will grow with the population growth, with new finds of golds, and also through the fluctuation of the price of everything against gold. The supply of gold will change. So there we go. I think we're very close to the end of this system of IOU Nothing, and I recommend you read this article written by John Exter where he talks about currencies today are IOU nothings. And he wrote this right in smack in the middle of all this mayhem that was happening between 1971 and 1973. He wrote it in June 1972. I'm going to put a link in the description below where you can find it and read this article. So I'll quickly go through these couple of articles that I spoke about earlier of why I think this petrodollar Anglo-American monetary system is coming to an end. And why Anglo-American? Well, because you need to understand that the UK was quite influential in setting up Bretton Woods with the Americans. Yes, sterling by 1971-73 was a shadow of itself from 70 years before, but the City of London, Wall Street, they're pulling the strings. So this is significant, and why? Well, because the FT is very pro-petrodollar, pro-Anglo-American, anti-Russian, and they've asked the question, can U.S. natural gas relieve Europe from Russian supply dependency? That's huge, I would say, because they're pushing the agenda here. They're pushing the case that Russia's losing, that they're going to be in trouble, right? Moves to provide LNG face obstacles in terms of infrastructure and shift to clean energy. So I'll quickly go through the first few paragraphs here, and then we'll move on to the next article. The US and EU last week announced a breakthrough deal to wean Europe off Russian natural gas. That groundbreaking pact, said Joe Biden, would strip Vladimir Putin of the ability to coerce and manipulate the continent's energy consumers. The joint game plan involves 3 steps. First, the U.S. will help the EU secure short-term liquefied natural gas supplies to begin displacing Russian gas. One thing about liquefied natural gas is that it has to be shipped across the ocean. Russian gas comes through a pipeline. It's really reliable. It's there on time. And it's really efficient. Second, Europe will work toward the goal of ensuring a bigger market for U.S. gas by 2030. Third, the U.S. would help Europe accelerate its transition to clean energy, eventually reducing its gas demand. It feels a little bit like when Richard Nixon came up with the Smithsonian Agreement and hailed it as a new system. It's the same thing. This is not going to work. And that's one of the reasons why, the petrodollar or the IOU nothing dollar is coming to an end as a major reserve currency. The dollar, of course, will still be here. We'll be buying a lot less, of course. How much more gas has U.S. offered? The U.S. said it would strive to add 15 billion cubic meters of liquefied natural gas to the EU this year, with more in years to come. It did not specify the origins of the gas, noting it would work with international partners. I think the Duran said that, and I watched the Duran yesterday, they said that the U.S. is trying to convince the Asians to part with some of their gas. Well, would you? So there you go. I don't think that's going to work out. It's wishful thinking by President Biden. The other one that I think article that I think is really very important, and this is to do with the meeting yesterday between the Russian foreign minister and his Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi. This is huge, I think, and even the FT again acknowledges this. And why? Well, because we've seen in the last week or so that Russia has really upped the ante. They want payments in ruble. They're doing a deal for Russian banks and others on gold, 5,000 rubles per gram. We've seen the ruble strengthen. And yes, Europe is kicking and screaming, saying they're not going to buy their gas in rubles. But I think they're going to be forced to. And especially when you see that China is behind Russia. So Beijing moves to strengthen Moscow ties in wake of Ukraine invasion. Russian and Chinese foreign ministers meet for the first time since conflict began last month. China has reaffirmed its partnership with Russia and said it wanted to push bilateral relations to a higher level. So here we go. I mean, this is really pushed, this crisis in Ukraine is really pushed China into a closer cooperation with Russia. And you can bet that China is looking also to wean itself off the IOU Nothing dollar. And I think these countries, they have done their homework. They know what the monetary system should be like. They know how important gold is to the system. Is it any wonder China and Russia have been accumulating so much gold in the last decade? Not only the China and Russia, but also India, even Brazil last year increased its gold reserves by 60%. So let's continue here. It says, in the first meeting between the countries since Russia started the war a month ago, China's foreign minister Wang Yi told his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov that the two sides will to develop bilateral ties is even firmer. Our confidence in advancing cooperation in various areas even stronger, according to a Chinese foreign ministry statement. So I'm going to stop right here. And yeah, you can bet that the other BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are going to be part of this new multipolar world. And I think someone noted, I saw a tweet that the BRICS nation, just the BRICS nation, correspond to about 40% of the world population. And that's not adding all the other countries in the emerging market world, so to speak. So yes, it seems to me that things are definitely heating up. Things don't happen overnight, of course. We saw that in 1971. It took until February 1973 for the whole system to unravel. They try to fix all of the currencies against a IOU Nothing dollar, and that doesn't work. The only thing that works is to have discipline, the discipline of gold, and that will come back. It's not going to come back tomorrow. It might take a year or two for this whole multipolar world to come about. And yes, there will be a lot of kicking and screaming by the West. There will be a lot of propaganda to try to discredit gold and what's happening. And the other thing I wanted to say, I'm not trying to defend anyone here, Russia, China, or the West. I'm just trying to observe to see what's going on so that we can protect ourselves and maybe even profit from this really historic change in the monetary system. And hopefully it will be for the better. So now let's look at where the markets are this morning. It's just before 8:30 a.m. London time. We've got spot gold at 1929. It's down just over $3. High's been 35. The low's been 1919 actually. Spot silver is down about 9 cents at 24.77. High's been 95. The low has been 24.55. Today, of course, is the end of the month, but also the end of the quarter. So it will be interesting to see where the precious metals settle later in the day. The Dow future is up 44 points, or 1/8%. The NASDAQ is up 88, or just under 2/3%. The S&P 500 is up a quarter or 11 points. FTSE is up 0.4% at 75.86. Euro Stoxx 50 is up 1/3% at 39.73. To the fiat currencies, to the IOU Nothing currencies, as John Exter would call them. Sterling is unchanged, 131.35. The euro is unchanged as well, 111.54. The dollar is continuing to drop back against the yen here. We're at 121.40. That's down 1/3. A couple of days ago, we got up to 125, which is a really key level. The dollar is down 1/8% versus the yuan at 635.15. The Aussie dollar is down 0.5% at 74.76. The dollar is up 0.2 versus the Canadian dollar at 125.02. And the Kiwi dollar is also down 0.5% at 69.46. To the general commodities, WTI crude is down just under 5% at 101.85. I saw a headline that President Biden is looking to release more oil from the strategic reserves. He did that last year, and the price did drop temporarily, and then it just shot up. So more of the same, I would say. Just an opportunity to buy the dip. Brent crude down 4% at 106.85. High-grade copper is down 0.8% at 471.45. U.S. nat gas is at 553.70, down 1%. And to finish off, last but not least, the U.S. Treasury market or bond market, we have seen yields come off in the last couple of days. They were uncomfortably high Tuesday morning, London time. And that's when the Bank of Japan came in to try to save the day temporarily. So right now, yeah, things have calmed down. The 10-year yield is back to like 232. It's down 4 basis points. I think we got up to almost 260 on Tuesday. And the 2-year is down 5 basis points at 228. So there was a slight inversion of the 210s a couple of days ago, but right now that spread is positive still. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. Think about subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. And you can also follow me on Rumble, Twitter, Facebook, and all these other platforms below here. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.